Good day to each and every one of you. Today we're going to talk about a very critical principle of life that God has established for us. And that is the notion of moving forward. I want to address an important point. God says, don't take them back who before that walked away or caused harm in your life. You see, relationships are more than just interactions. They are the divine connections God places in your life with purpose. But that purpose, my friends, doesn't always remain. Sometimes God allows people to enter our lives for a season, for a reason. And when that reason has been fulfilled, He moves us on to the next stage of our lives. We must first understand God's purpose for relationships. Relationships were never meant to just fill an emotional void. They are part of God's broader design for our lives. There are connections that may be meant to teach us something, to help us grow. And then when that growth has been realized, it's time to move on. If we insist on returning to a relationship where that purpose has ended, we not only hurt ourselves, but dishonor the divine timing that God has ordained for us. The next thing we must understand is the power of emotional detachment. When you are emotionally attached to someone who doesn't serve your higher purpose, it creates a hindrance. God desires for you to heal, to be whole, before you can continue on your journey. The act of returning to something broken only delays your healing and blocks your future. Now, some may argue that love means going back, but God is clear your self-worth and respect are paramount. God designed you with great value. When you return to unhealthy relationships or environments, you are dishonoring yourself. And you're dishonoring God's masterpiece. Love and respect for yourself are not selfish. They are an act of obedience to God's design. It's also crucial to recognize the danger of unfinished business. We can easily find ourselves trapped in cycles of unresolved conflict and regret, constantly seeking closure from a past that was never meant to be revived. This keeps you from clarity, from hearing God's voice, and from fulfilling His destiny for your life. God's purpose for you cannot be fulfilled while you are entangled in emotional chaos from the past. This brings me to the concept of forgiveness. We must forgive, yes, but forgiveness does not mean returning to harmful situations. Forgiveness is about releasing yourself from the pain and the control of the past. It is not an invitation to allow that same hurt to re-enter your life. God's forgiveness opens the door for healing, but healing requires separation from past cycles that will only keep you bound. Lastly, I want to encourage you to trust God's timing and future. He is the author of your story, and He is not finished with you yet. Moving forward is not a sign of weakness, it is an act of faith. You are trusting that God has a better plan, that He is guiding you to something greater than what you left behind. The best is yet to come. And when you align yourself with God's purpose, you will discover that there is so much more waiting for you beyond what you once knew. So today I encourage you to let go. Do not take them back. Let God heal you, prepare you, and move you forward into the future He has already planned. Keep your eyes fixed on His promises, for the journey ahead is greater than the one behind. Amen. Relationships are not random occurrences in our lives. They are purposeful connections that God places in our past to shape us, teach us, and guide us toward our divine destiny. We must come to understand that every relationship we encounter serves a specific purpose in God's grand plan for us. Sometimes those purposes are clear relationships that bring joy, growth, and companionship, but other times the purpose may be more subtle. In many cases, the purpose of a relationship may be to teach us valuable lessons about ourselves, to refine our character, or to help us develop emotional strength. Each relationship is designed to contribute to our journey in a unique way, and often we are unaware of how deeply these connections are influencing our lives until after they've passed. When we acknowledge that relationships are meant to serve a divine purpose, we begin to understand that not all relationships are meant to last forever. Some relationships are meant to be short-term stepping stones that help us learn something crucial before moving on to the next phase of our lives. Other relationships may last a lifetime, but that is not always the case. God places people in our lives for specific seasons, and it is vital to recognize when a season has ended. Sometimes a relationship that served its purpose in one season can become a hindrance in the next season if we cling to it for the wrong reasons. Understanding God's purpose for relationships involves recognizing that He sees the bigger picture for our lives. He knows the path we are supposed to walk, the lessons we need to learn, and the people we need to meet along the way. We may be tempted to hold on to relationships out of familiarity or fear of change, but God's wisdom far exceeds our understanding. When it's time for a relationship to end, it is often because God is preparing us for something greater, something more aligned with His will for our future. Holding on to the past prevents us from stepping fully into the future He has prepared for us. By embracing this perspective, we stop viewing relationships as mere emotional connections and start seeing them as tools God uses to shape our purpose. This awareness helps us make wise decisions about who we allow into our lives, when to nurture certain relationships, and when it's time to let go. We no longer feel bound by the past, but free to trust that God will bring the right people into our lives at the right time. This understanding brings clarity and peace, knowing that everything God orchestrates has a divine purpose, even when we may not understand it immediately. Emotional detachment is a powerful principle that many people struggle to understand, especially when it comes to relationships. It doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. Rather, it is the ability to release unhealthy emotional attachments that can hinder personal growth and spiritual development. In the context of relationships, emotional detachment means recognizing when an emotional connection has become detrimental and choosing to break free from it in order to focus on healing and moving forward. Often people get trapped in emotional cycles that prevent them from fully experiencing the life God has called them to live. These emotional attachments can be formed out of fear, guilt, or the desire for comfort. We may hold on to past relationships or situations because they feel familiar, or we believe we can change the other person, or that we need them to complete us. However, God desires for us to become whole and complete in Him first. He wants us to rely on His love and guidance, rather than on the fluctuating emotions and attachments that come from others. When we choose emotional detachment, we allow ourselves a space to heal. Unresolved emotions from the past can weigh us down and keep us from seeing clearly. They can distort our view of the future, making it difficult to walk confidently in the direction God is leading us. Emotional detachment allows us to release those burdens so we can embrace the healing and clarity that comes from God. It helps us regain emotional stability and enables us to see relationships as they truly are, without the filter of emotional dependency. This process also involves recognizing when certain attachments or situations are preventing us from fulfilling our true purpose. Some people, circumstances, or past events hold power over us because we continue to allow our emotions to be controlled by them. Letting go of those attachments doesn't mean we don't care. It simply means we are choosing to put our emotional energy into what truly aligns with our purpose. We stop giving our power away to things or people that no longer serve our higher good. This gives us the ability to move forward with a clearer focus and renewed strength. In the Bible, God encourages us to guard our hearts because they are the wellspring of life. Emotional detachment is a way of guarding our hearts, ensuring that we do not allow external factors or past experiences to take control of our emotional state. It is a form of spiritual maturity where we are no longer led by our emotions, but instead we learn to make decisions based on wisdom, discernment, and God's direction. Through emotional detachment, we learn to respect ourselves more deeply. We understand that our identity and value are not found in the approval or validation of others, but in who God says we are. When we release unhealthy emotional attachments, we open ourselves to experience God's love more fully and freely. We also create space for healthier, more fulfilling relationships to come into our lives. Relationships that are built on relationships that are built on mutual respect, trust, and divine purpose. Emotional detachment is not about shutting ourselves off from love or compassion, but about making room for the right love and the right connections so we can walk fully in the destiny God has planned for us. Self-worth and respect are two foundational principles that influence how we navigate relationships and life in general. God has created each of us with inherent value, unique gifts, and a divine purpose. Understanding our self-worth is crucial because it shapes how we view ourselves and how we allow others to treat us. When we recognize our value in God's eyes, we no longer seek validation or approval from external sources that are fleeting or unreliable. Our sense of worth comes not from what we have achieved, what others think of us, or how many relationships we have, but from the fact that we are fearfully and wonderfully made by a Creator who loves us unconditionally. Self-worth is not about arrogance or selfishness, but rather a deep understanding of who we are in Christ. When we know our worth, we are able to set healthy boundaries that protect our hearts, minds, and spirits. This protection is not meant to isolate us from others, but to ensure that we engage in relationships that are life-giving and aligned with our divine purpose. If we do not recognize our worth, we may end up in relationships that devalue us, disrespect us, or cause us to compromise our values. The principle of self-worth teaches us that we are not meant to settle for anything less than the fullness of who God created us to be. It compels us to make choices that reflect our value, not based on what others expect, but in alignment with God's design for our lives. Respect is an essential aspect of any healthy relationship, whether with friends, family, or romantic partners. When we respect ourselves, we naturally invite others to do the same. Self-respect means recognizing that we deserve to be treated with kindness, dignity, and love. It requires us to stand firm in our values and refuse to tolerate anything that diminishes our worth. When we respect ourselves, we do not allow others to treat us in ways that compromise our peace or our integrity. We are clear about what we will accept and what we will not. And we understand that maintaining our self-respect is non-negotiable. Respecting ourselves means honoring our own needs, desires, and dreams. It involves acknowledging that we are deserving of happiness, fulfillment, and peace. When we prioritize our well-being and honor our whole hearts, we set a powerful example for others. It teaches those around us how to value and respect us in return. Too often, we allow the demands or expectations of others to push us out of alignment with what we truly need. The principle of respect calls us to honor our own journey and protect our peace, even when others may not understand or support our decisions. In relationships, when we respect ourselves, we naturally draw people who also respect us. We no longer seek out toxic or unbalanced relationships, but rather we attract individuals who value us as much as we value ourselves. True respect in relationships is built on mutual understanding, trust, and appreciation for one another's uniqueness. It is not about control, manipulation, or settling for less than what we deserve. Respect is about recognizing each other's worth and treating one another as God intended, both as equals, deserving of love, kindness, and understanding. In the context of faith, God has called us to love others as He loves us, but He also calls us to love ourselves in a healthy, righteous way. This love is rooted in respect for who we are in Him, and it guides us to make choices that reflect our worth and dignity. When we fully embrace the principle of self-worth and respect, we not only transform our relationships with others, but also grow into the person God has called us to be. We begin to walk in our full potential, living with confidence and grace, knowing that we are worthy of the best that life has to offer because we are fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. Unfinished business is a powerful and often detrimental force that can keep us trapped in cycles of emotional turmoil, regret, and confusion. It refers to unresolved issues, broken relationships, or lingering thoughts from past experiences that have not been fully addressed or healed. These unresolved matters prevent us from moving forward in life with clarity and peace. The danger lies in how unfinished business can hold us back from embracing the present and the future that God has prepared for us. It often pulls us back to old wounds, making it difficult to focus on the opportunities that lie ahead. When we leave things unresolved, whether it's a conversation we never had, a relationship we never fully let go of, or an issue we never addressed, it creates an emotional weight that we carry with us. This weight distracts us from our purpose, clouding our judgment and distorting our vision. It's like trying to walk through life while carrying a heavy load that weighs us down with every step we take. Instead of walking freely toward our destiny, we are slowed by the emotional baggage that comes from the things we've left unfinished. This baggage can prevent us from experiencing the fullness of God's peace and joy because it keeps us tethered to the past. Unfinished business also opens the door to confusion. When we fail to address issues, we begin to live in a state of uncertainty. Our minds are occupied with unresolved questions, regrets, and what-ifs. This confusion makes it harder for us to make clear decisions or hear God's voice clearly. We may find ourselves making choices based on emotions tied to the past rather than making decisions based on faith in God's will. It also prevents us from fully engaging in the present because our minds are preoccupied with things that no longer serve us. Unfinished business can cause emotional leakage. When we suppress unresolved feelings, they don't simply disappear, they leak into other areas of our lives. The anger, bitterness, guilt, or regret that comes from unresolved issues will find their way into new relationships, work, and other areas of life. This emotional leakage creates a toxic environment within us that affects everything we touch. It can lead to broken relationships, poor decision-making, and a lack of peace. We become trapped in a cycle where unresolved issues continue to have a negative impact on our present and future, even though the original issue may be long in the past. The danger of unfinished business is not just emotional but spiritual as well. God calls us to live in freedom, to release what hinders us, and to forgive those who have wronged us. Holding on to unfinished business can keep us from fully embracing God's forgiveness and grace. We cannot move forward into the future God has for us if we are still holding on to things that have already been dealt with in the past. Spiritual growth requires us to release the past and trust God to heal what has been broken. When we allow unfinished business to remain unresolved, we are essentially saying that we do not trust God's power to heal or restore. The danger of unfinished business is that it traps us in the past. It keeps us looking backward instead of forward. We become fixated on what happened, why it happened, or how it could have been different. This fixation prevents us from embracing the future and moving toward the plans that God has set before us. God's word tells us that He has plans to prosper us, to give us a hope and a future. But we cannot walk into that future if we are still holding on to the past. When we keep revisiting the same issues over and over without resolution, we block the new opportunities and blessings that are waiting for us. In order to move forward in our lives, we must confront our unfinished business. We must seek healing and closure where it's needed. This might mean having difficult conversations, seeking forgiveness, or letting go of relationships that no longer align with our purpose. It also means forgiving ourselves for the mistakes we've made and accepting God's grace. Only then can we experience true freedom and peace, allowing us to walk into the fullness of God's plan for our lives without the weight of the past holding us back. Unfinished business is a barrier that we must remove in order to embrace the future God has designed for us. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful and transformative principles in the Christian faith. It is not only a commandment, but also a gift that has the power to heal wounds, restore relationships, and set us free. However, forgiveness is often misunderstood or viewed as a sign of weakness. In truth, forgiveness is a divine act of strength and obedience. It is the act of releasing someone from the debt they owe us, regardless of whether they ask for forgiveness or even acknowledge the hurt they've caused. God's forgiveness toward us is not based on our deserving it, but on His grace, and He calls us to extend that same grace to others. This is where the power of moving forward comes into play. When we forgive, we are not necessarily excusing the wrongdoing or pretending that it didn't hurt us. Forgiveness is not about minimizing the pain or injustice we've experienced. Rather, it is about choosing to release the hold that the hurt has over us. By choosing to forgive, we let go of the emotional weight that keeps us tied to the offense and free ourselves from its ongoing impact on our hearts and minds. Holding on to resentment, bitterness, or anger only continues to hurt us. These emotions poison our spirits and hinder our ability to move forward into the life God has called us to live. When we forgive, we create room for healing and peace, both for ourselves and for the person we are forgiving. The act of forgiveness is a deliberate decision, not a fleeting emotion. It involves choosing to act in faith, trusting that God will heal the wounds that have been inflicted upon us. Forgiveness allows us to break the chains of past hurts and move forward in freedom. Without forgiveness, we remain stuck in the past, revisiting old wounds and reliving painful experiences over and over. It is like dragging around a heavy weight that prevents us from stepping into the future with confidence and joy. But when we forgive, we let go of that weight. We free ourselves to embrace the new opportunities, relationships, and blessings that lie ahead. Moving forward in life requires a willingness to let go of what has already occurred. It means acknowledging the past without letting it define our future. Forgiveness is not forgetting the pain, but choosing not to allow it to control our present or future. When we forgive, we choose to release the past and embrace the hope of a better future. It allows us to stop looking backward in regret or anger, and instead start moving forward with faith and anticipation of what God has prepared for us. God's promises for our future are greater than the disappointments and hurts of our past. But we cannot walk fully into those promises if we are still shackled by unforgiveness. Forgiveness is also a key element in spiritual growth. As we forgive, we align ourselves with God's will and character. Jesus modeled forgiveness when he hung on the cross, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." He demonstrated that forgiveness is not about the other person deserving it, but about freeing ourselves from the power of the offense. When we forgive, we mirror the heart of God and demonstrate his love and grace to others. It is in this act of forgiveness that we are able to grow in compassion, humility, and love, qualities that are essential for our spiritual maturity and our relationships with others. Forgiveness brings healing, not just to our own hearts, but to our relationships. When we forgive, we open the door for reconciliation and restoration. We may not always be able to restore the relationship to its previous state, but forgiveness paves the way for peace. It removes the barriers that have been erected by hurt and misunderstanding, allowing us to interact with others from a place of healing rather than pain. In doing so, we create an environment where grace and understanding can thrive, and the wounds of the past no longer dominate our interactions. The process of forgiveness and moving forward is not always easy, and it often requires time and emotional work. We may need to seek professional counseling, lean on our faith, or pray for the strength to forgive. But the journey is worth it. Moving forward means that we stop allowing the past to control us. We stop allowing old hurts to shape our present and future. We allow ourselves the freedom to embrace the abundant life God promises. Forgiveness is the key to unlocking that freedom, and moving forward is the result of choosing to forgive. As we forgive, we begin to experience healing, peace, and a renewed sense of purpose. In doing so, we honor God, heal our hearts, and step boldly into the future He has planned for us. Trusting God's timing and future is a crucial aspect of the Christian faith, one that requires patience, faith, and surrender. It's easy to become frustrated or discouraged when things don't unfold according to our own plans or timelines, but we must understand that God's timing is always perfect. He sees the bigger picture, the plans He has for us, the lessons we need to learn, and the circumstances that must align for His purposes to be fully realized. The challenge lies in trusting that His timing is better than ours, and that He knows exactly when and how things should happen for our good. We live in a world that often operates on instant gratification. We are used to quick results, fast answers, and immediate solutions. However, God's way is different. His timeline doesn't always match our expectations. We may pray for something, believe for it, and even work toward it, but it doesn't seem to happen in the way or at the time we envision. In moments of waiting, doubt can creep in, and we may question whether God is listening, whether we are on the right path, or if His promises will ever come to fruition. However, this is precisely when faith is tested. It is in those moments of uncertainty that we are called to trust, not just in the outcome, but in the process. God's timing often involves waiting, and waiting requires patience. But patience is not simply the ability to endure, it is the ability to remain faithful, hopeful, and steadfast, even when things aren't going according to plan. Trusting God's timing means that we trust Him with the process and the end result. We trust that He is working behind the scenes, orchestrating everything in alignment with His perfect will for our lives. Just because we don't see immediate results doesn't mean that God is not at work. In fact, waiting often teaches us valuable lessons about dependence, perseverance, and faith. One of the hardest aspects of trusting God's timing is understanding that His plan for us may look different from our own. We may have specific goals, dreams, or expectations for our lives, but God's plan often exceeds our understanding. Sometimes His plan takes a different route than what we initially imagined. When we trust God's timing, we release our need to control the outcome and acknowledge that His way is always better. His timing is not limited by the constraints of human understanding or earthly expectations. God is not bound by time as we are. He sees all things from the beginning to the end. And He knows exactly when and how to bring about what is best for us. Furthermore, trusting in God's timing involves understanding that His plans are designed to bring us to a place of spiritual maturity and alignment with His will. It's not just about achieving the things we want, it's about becoming the people He has called us to be. God uses the waiting seasons to mold us, refine us, and prepare us for the blessings He has in store. Sometimes we may not be ready for what we are asking for, and waiting gives us the opportunity to grow and develop in ways that will equip us to handle what's ahead. We are being shaped, strengthened, and stretched during the waiting process, even if it feels uncomfortable or frustrating. In trusting God's future for us, we surrender our own plans and agendas, knowing that His vision for our lives is far greater than anything we could imagine on our own. We may not always know what lies ahead, but we can trust that God does. His future for us is filled with hope, purpose, and divine opportunities, and as we place our trust in Him, we align ourselves with that future. Trusting in God's future requires faith in His goodness, His provision, and His ability to lead us exactly where we need to go. It is knowing that His plans are not to harm us, but to prosper us, to give us a hope and a future. When we choose to trust God's timing and His future for us, we move from a place of anxiety and uncertainty to a place of peace and confidence. We stop trying to force things to happen in our own timing and instead rest in the knowledge that God's plans are always for our good. Even when things don't unfold as we expected, we trust that He is working all things together for our benefit. As we trust God's timing, we learn to walk by faith, not by sight, and to believe that He is faithful to fulfill every promise He has made. Trusting in His future allows us to release fear and embrace the journey, knowing that with each step, we are moving closer to the future He has prepared for us, one filled with His purpose, His presence, and His provision.